Hello. We're about to go on a journey to understand what these lights flashing and all of the numbers surrounding them mean, both in terms of their significance in terms of mathematics and the significance in terms of what we might deduce about these numbers and the phenomena associated with them. Most of these images do come from footage of unidentified aerial phenomena. Two of the images have been classified as identified now, and I'm offering these as a means of comparison and understanding. The rest of them are more or less unidentified, and we'll look at two explicitly unidentified aerial phenomena as classified. One is classified by MUFON in Canada as unidentified, and another is by the NARCAP Scientific Study Group identified. The one up here as unidentified and really classified a lot of information. So we'll really cover what this means, what the numbers say, and deep dive into this. So just know that they reveal, it seems to be a kind of signature expression of mathematics when some of these are pulsing. So I have several examples that pulse in sacred geometric patterns, so the golden ratio, in very elegant ways. And I'll build up from the plane, which you see up here, right? We'll build our vocabulary together so we can then understand the demonstration of geometry here in the pulsation of lights and what that might actually signify. Before we continue, I need to say, and we need to cover the understanding that geometry as expressed through pulsations of light, right, really do reveal or prove an intelligent and intentional expression. So that's a technologically mediated expression of an abstract understanding of number, right, in this flashing light. That's what we see. We never actually see such strong pulsations, such geometric processions in nature. It's always a little bit more chaotic. And we'll talk about that as we go, because I'm sort of looking at the numbers and seeing the pulsations, and some feel as if they're expressive of chaos, the chaos of life. Some feel like they're expressive of the rectilinearity of technology. So that's one of the things people say when you're looking for evidence of human behavior. You look for the straight line because nature works in curves. And so we should see that very shortly. So let's dive in. This video of the airplane, you can see, comes from John Martin, who plays classical guitar and does CE5 style invitations and films what he sees. So he caught a plane, I believe somewhere in here. It sort of goes down. Yeah, that's the plane. And we'll just skip forward. It's only a few seconds. Yeah. He catches the plane. Where is that? I think we totally skipped it. Yeah, he catches the plane somewhere in here. And then there's an orb that goes away. I'm not necessarily interested in the orb. I'm looking for that airplane, which is, thank you, anomalous flash. So this is the sort of example of how I'm working. I'm looking for interesting flashes. I mean, these are all interesting, but I wanted a control which was clearly expressed in the plane up in the top corner of the video as a control. So what I end up doing is I computationally analyze this frame by frame, and I figure out the size of the dot, the intensity of the dot, the brightness of the dot, and then I graph it. So when I graph it, you can see these really strong pulsation patterns, right? This is when both of the white lights are on. This is only when, this lower part is only when the running lights are on, and you can see this regular pattern. So I print this out, and when I print this out, let me show you that. All right, so when I print this out, I get a chart, and I start figuring out the intervals. I want to find out, I start by drawing straight lines through these. This shows the area of the pulses. So on the footage, how big is the white blob, basically. This one's how bright is it, and this one's how far of a distance there is between the darkest dark and the lightest light of the image. And you can see that the number is being expressed on the GIF, and you can see the animation. You can see the green sort of I've drawn around the contour of that blob, so that you can see this is what I'm analyzing. So that's a demonstration. That's why I have that on the screen. You can pause the screen and look at the charts, or go to the dashboard and get this data. So I start to do an analysis, and I know this one's a plane, but I want to describe it geometrically. So I start looking. I go, okay, this is the start of a pulse. This is the end of the pulse. Start of a pulse, end of a pulse. Start of a pulse, end of a pulse. And so that's a regular interval. I know that because I can take my compass and I can make it the width of that pulse, and I can send it over here. So I go, oh, absolutely, this green to green line, absolutely the same. That's the start of a pulse. Again, start of a pulse. So we see that being reflected. So then if I'm looking for geometric significance, I'm looking for things that are like bisections or the golden ratio. That's really what a geometric communication is, or other meaningful ratios. But I'm looking for golden particularly because it's present within the signals, as well as a signifier of an aesthetic awareness and a mathematical awareness. So how do I test for that awareness, right? So I use these golden ratio calipers. They move backwards and forwards in the golden ratio. Golden ratio says as, right, so we're seeing this expressed here, as this length, as A is to B, this length, this bigger length, that relationship is shared between B and A plus B. So it's nested. That relationship is sort of nested. And I look for that in the pulsations of light because it's meaningful. And I want to show you this because this is coming from an airplane, right? And when I sort of start to scan, looking for intersection points, and I go, okay, this point, and this point are golden ratio. But as you can see, this point and this point isn't associated with any pulse, right? But it is associated with this mark, which is designated by this vesica Pisces and this line through that, which is the bisection. That's a fundamental ruler and compass activity. You bisect a line. And I got that by bisecting these pulsations, finding their center, by using those as the center of the circles of the vesica Pisces, and then casting it down. So then we're starting to see this point is geometrically significant, even though there's no pulsation associated with that point, because it's halfway between the pulses. So I'm saying this has a sort of one-dimensional expression of the golden ratio in the interval pulse, because as you can see, when we start here. Here is the golden ratio. Here is the golden ratio. And then if we extend it out again, we're getting golden ratio when we consider the bisection experience, right? So isn't that interesting? So this pulse is bisected when we look for the golden ratio. So we're seeing that actually expressed in human technology. This is a clear and distinct sign of human technology in the air. It's very well identified. You can see it in the experience. So that's one of the things I looked at. That's the only plane here that we fully understand. So here is another, let me actually go back to this. We're going to pull up the right animation for the corner of the video, which is the pyramid. That's the analysis I did of this footage that Jeremy Corbell put out. It was from U.S. Navy. Filmed this. The Pentagon said, yeah, that's legit footage. And I'll just zoom to it and sort of start to play it because you'll see what happens, right? Apparently, this UAP pyramid shows up, right, off the coast, but you have to start observing these sort of reflection points. There's 3 of these pyramids, right? There's 3 of the dots, and you can see all of these other things have pyramids alongside of it. So that's whether or not that's a UAP, that's up for debate. But we've got the New York Post offering a debunking of it, saying, "Hey, it's going 40. The speed it's going. There's a regular pulsation pattern of the light." One of my buddies, Dan Berg, pointed this out to me, the bokeh effect, right? So we're seeing that if there was a triangular aperture, there would be a triangular figure being expressed, and that's kind of what we see. But the nail in the coffin for me is this pattern, and this might look a little bit different than the pattern you saw before, but I want to just walk through it because, as you can see, the footage that I'm working with isn't great. I can't accurately define the center of that figure, the blob, for some of the frames, but for about 100 to 300 frames, we get this very clear, distinct pattern, right? And we could actually count how far these pulses are away and how long that is, right? So we're starting to see something here. And so we need to go into geometry, and I'll just set this one right here because you might get a clue as to what's going on. So this is what the debunker said. It's probably a plane. I started by saying, okay, this is a pulse, this is the start of a pulse, this is the start of a pulse, this is the start of a pulse. I see it pulse and sort of stay on and then drop down. So that's sort of pulse, drop down. This difference between the highest brightness and here may actually be sort of a brightness thing in the video itself, correcting. We see when we look at the difference between the deepest darks and the highest lights in here, that I'm calling the valence analysis, we can start to see these strong interval pulses with this diminished brightness in between, very reminiscent of the airplane, right? So again, we can bisect these intervals, the intervals that are pulsing, and then start to cast circles around and make the bisections. And then we see, yes, indeed, these have the same regular pulsation patterns. And if we consider the golden ratio, we see actually the same exact golden ratio expression in these lights as in the plane lights. That is relying on these intersection points that are not marked by a pulsation of light, but by the bisection of the interval where the lights aren't. So that is actually the same characteristic we're seeing in the airplane. So when we do the calculations, if we calculate the difference in frames between the start of these pulsations, right? When we start doing that, which we can do very easily since it's, as you can see, mapped frame by frame. There's 30 frames per second. And so we can calculate it out. We go, okay, there's 42 frames between each pulse here. And guess what? For the pyramid, there's 42 frames. Guess what? There's 42 frames between the green lines here as well. So when we divide that out, right, and here's the math estimate. Here's the math I'm doing. 1,800 frames per minute at 30 frames per second, divided by about 42 frames per pulse, gives us 42 pulses per minute. And guess what the specifications of the FAA are? 40 pulses per minute, that's the Federal Aviation Association, something like that. 40 to 100 pulses per minute for aviation lights. So we're within the threshold in both cases, and we have the identical pattern of pulsation between the known airplane and the Navy pyramid. And we have an understanding of why it might be pyramid because of the bokeh effect. So we can really conclude in alignment with the expert who has already debunked this, that this is a plane. But we're doing it to test out this novel method of ruler and compass analysis of UAP pulsations. So let's go to the next example. The next example comes from Reddit. And let's change the GIF over to this video. This one's a really clean one to analyze. As you can see, and there's a sort of a pulsing experience. This sort of looks like I'm not quite sure, the moon or something. But in the video, this apparently comes from a police officer on duty from last spring. And the orb showed up and starts to do something, and then it moves across the lake. I track its movement for a while. There's pulsation here, between frames 400 and 700, that really bring it up and down. And this is a characteristic motion of the orbs. It looks like the focus on the camera isn't working, or it's moving forward fast, or it's expanding. One of those two. So we've got that motion going on, and we know this is an orb. We know it's pretty good footage because it comes from a police officer. Something like that. So I analyzed it here, and this produces this pattern, right? So we can start to see some heights of pulsation. What I've got going on is the area of the pulsation, which is measured by the letter A in the frame up in the corner. I've got the difference in area, so if by frame, we're computing how different it is as it goes along. Same thing with the brightness. So this is giving me clues if it's moving, if it's shifting, that I'm interested in that. And then finally, here's the brightness. So when we draw this out, right, this was the pyramid, by the way. When we draw this out, we get this pattern. And I can't make heads or tails of it, actually, in terms of what's going on. I've mapped it at several different scales, and I've done the tests, and I've looked for intervals, and I go, well, I don't know. It sort of looks like it. And when I do this, I go, oh, well, actually, there's some ruler, some intersections with the golden ratio. I can find some intervals, but the density of meaning in the pulsations isn't present for me at this level of analysis using these tools of analysis that come from this inquiry, basically. So I go, I don't know what this is. It looks like an orb, but it isn't exhibiting the characteristic pattern of geometry that I'm interested in the UAP. So I'm offering this as a sort of counterexample, like, hey, there's not meaning in everything. This is what it looks like. So let's go to the next example. See, this is that's the zoom in, and then I'll zoom out to show you the whole expression here. It's and then it shrinks down. So let's shift over to what comes next. The NARCAP 20 report, which I really am happy about. The same person who recommended I look into this video, which comes from NARCAP, which is a organization to help study this around pilots and things like that. So they are flying in an airplane, and this again sort of looks like sort of fuzzy behavior. Like, is it focusing? Is the camera having a hard time focusing? What's going on? Sort of thing. So I analyzed it to really understand what's going on. I stabilized it. You can see what's happening in the top corner there. and so you get a sense of it, right? These are pilots; they're commenting on it. You'll see at some time that they just scan down into this radar image, and then scientists studied this and reported on this. So this thing is going 600 miles per hour next to a plane and has been there for um, 30 minutes or so. So I want to show you what that one looks like. This one is a segment of it. This is only about 400 frames, so it's pretty quick. And this is a highly regular pulsation pattern, actually. And you can see that happening like right now. We can expand that out. And you can see these sort of regular, something happening, regular, something's happening, and that might be movements of the camera, but that also might be movement of the orb. What I'm doing here is proving out there is actual geometric patterns. So let's now move from this example, which is somewhat incoherent, to what we were looking on the screen, right? And so we can start to see the same patterns, and knowing that this pattern here happens around here. That's where this is coming in, right? So let's talk about that now. And oh yeah, this is also from about the same spot, actually. It's just a different scale. So, and here we've got brightness, and then we've got the difference between highest high and lowest low, the valence. But here we've got brightness, valence, and then I'm adding area of the orb on the footage as sort of expressed by that outline drawn on the animation. So we see this really clear pattern of it getting bigger, dropping down in size, then jumping right up to a big size, and then staying that size, and then jumping down. So this pulsation from here to here and here to here might actually remind you of the plane light flashing, right? The plane light flashing. But it's clearly something else is going on. Let's get the golden ratio calipers so I can just sort of show off what's going on. So all of, like, we've got, let's see, these lines, these, they all are lining up now more or less as designated by these pulsation points, or the end of the pulsation, or some real measure of the golden ratio there, right? Isn't that, I mean, it's just really beautiful to see that coming out. And that's a regular pattern expressed in these extraordinary ways. So given that this pattern has a periodicity and elegance that I think this pattern actually is more elegant than just the plane flashing, and it's being expressed in the video that is extraordinary to watch, and it reveals capabilities, and the pulsation of light too are showing. So we have to then go, this geometry really does support the conclusions of the researchers that looked into this, right? That said, hey, this is unidentified, this is extraordinary, these are extraordinary qualities. This just adds another dimension, saying, yes, it is extraordinary, and it has a geometric dimension to it. Given that it has the golden ratio in it, we can conclude that it has an aesthetic awareness as well, meaning it's aware of beauty. So it's aware of beauty, and it is technologically capable, I guess, given the regularity of this pattern. This one, to me, however, feels more like the chaos of nature. This feels more like the chaos of nature, as if it's sort of holding a period of coherence like we might sing a song or we might perform music. That's what this feels like to me, as opposed to the clockwork of the plane, right? The plane lights. This references the plane lights. I think, I mean, if you were a sentient blob of light, a plasmid consciousness that can radiate in golden ratio, you might actually go, oh, they're talking to me. They're talking to me. Maybe I'll say hello. They're saying hello. I'm going to say hello. How you doing? Hello, how you doing? So we've got this where we've got a kind of a two-dimensional nesting of the golden ratio. Here it's nested and here it's nested, as opposed to the one-dimensional nesting in the airplane communication, which, I mean, like the one-dimensional communication we're seeing here, which is, this is taken from the pyramid, but it's the same thing. We're not seeing the golden ratio necessarily in these points or whatever. We're just seeing it expressed once. But here we're seeing it expressed multiple times. And actually, when you look at these differences too, they're expressed. So it's a multi-dimensional expression of this same pulsation that these two planes that I examined are sending off. So it seems like they're saying, hey, how you doing? Just back to us from our just hello or something. So I'm hoping that we can start a conversation, because this orb in particular did not seem sinister. It seemed beautiful and amazing when you listen to the video. All right, so let's go back. Let's look at the next one, closing out this one and this one. So we are going to look at another video captured from the same place as the plane, but it is truly like a UAP, and you can see that in this motion, in this pulsation. It looks and feels different. This comes from John Martin, who's doing CE5. That's sort of somewhere in here, right? So we can just sort of see, yeah, that sort of activity. I think this is the one I'm pulling from. So it looks different. It feels different in a way. It's moving in strange, floaty sort of ways, alive ways that I'm only looking at the pulsation. I'm not looking at relative position and things like that. So let me show you what's happening. This one is this one. Yeah, this is it's Hello Beautiful. I'm calling it because John Martin goes Hello Beautiful, and so again we see the regular periodicity. This is the area that you're seeing outlined in the animation. This is the brightness of the whole frame that you're seeing in the animation. So it's picking up on some of the other stars sometimes, but you can see those gorgeous flashes. And then this again is the valence, meaning the distance between the highest highs and lowest lows. So we're seeing the same sort of pulsation happening. You can see that here in the brightness too, although that's one of the weakest measures for signal I'm finding. So let me take you into this. So again, we see regular stuff happening. And I'll just walk you through it. So here's a high pulse, very, very bright, and then it chills out for a while. It's sort of medium bright. There's a sort of dip, this natural sort of dipping pattern, another dip pattern, and then a brightness, and then a pretty low gap for a while. If you, hang on, if you measure it with the compasses, guess what? It's golden ratio. So let me show you that quickly. But here we have golden ratio, not once, not a one-dimensional golden ratio kind of nesting, but it is mirrored in symmetry, which is actually another, so we've got bisection, we've got regular intervals, we've got mirroring, we've got symmetry, we have awareness of aesthetic dimensions, the presence of these orbs in the context of CE5, generally indicates that they are the presence of this coherent signal, actually, as opposed to the incoherent signals that we might see elsewhere, in the presence of CE5 are indicating intentional and coherent communication. You can sort of guess that the vertical measures here are golden ratio. That's a thing that we can explore later. I'm just looking at the timing of this. Again, we can sort of, if we start here, right, we can start finding these intersection points of the golden ratio. It's really beautiful to see that sort of extending. And that sort of nesting, I say, is really characteristic of this. It gives a sense more of a multidimensionality rather than that linear kind of pulsation that we saw with the planes. That's a really beautiful video. Now I want to show you another one, just because we're building our vocabulary here. This one, let's shift this one over. I'm going to shift that the animation over to the video called Cosmic Highway, and this comes from Cosmic Highway. This comes from Jimmy Blanchette. He sends out radio signals. They get back to him, and he videoed this during the day. This is the video he talked about. This is it from, and I'll just sort of play it so you get the sense as kind of where it is, what's going on, right? So you see that pulsation experience happening. So I'll just pause that. I will come back to here, and this is its pulse pattern, right? So again, we see this really strong periodicity. And I wanted to talk about that actually because, hang on, I'll switch over to the geometry because this is interesting, right? We can actually do some math on this. So 32 frame, this is 240. 245 minus 32 is 245 minus 32. That's like 220, right? So there's between this pulse and this pulse, this pulse and this pulse, there's 220 frames. And that's roughly about 10 seconds, right? So when we had 42 frames between the two, we were hitting the 40 pulses per minute thereabouts. So if we divide out, and we can do that relatively quickly, is the 1800 by that amount will give us how many pulses per minute. And if it's between 40 and 100, that may or may not be a human aircraft. If it's above or below that, we know it's not registered with the FAA. So let's do some geometry actually on that pulse. The thing that reminded me was this from the Hello Beautiful clip we just saw. This is at about 20 pulses per minute. So that's someone doing something bad with a drone, or it's actually a UAP. This is what we're looking at here with Jimmy Blanchette's. We've got the big pulse. We've got a big pulse. Little, big. The interesting thing here is this is the area of the pulse, so it really does get really big and go really small, as you can see in the animation up there. We've got the brightness, so that's actually showing more data here than the area, which is why I do these different analyses. And then we have the valence, which is the lowest low to the highest high. How big is that distance? And so we see this being expressed, this pulse being expressed in very, very clear ways. And I love this one because this one is, it blows my mind, this grid pattern, because we see a regular sort of interval pattern. So when we start getting the differences between each of the peaks, we're like, oh, that's kind of the same, 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 and it just continues, right? Same thing when we go between these colors, right, this is obviously the same. These distances, right, are mapping out the same intervals. And then if we take the purple between these peaks, they're like clearly the same, right? I'm showing you with a compass. And this is also the same. So this is the thing that I'm saying is a multi-dimensional or nesting or multi-level golden ratio expression. We see only one dimension in the plane expression, the plane light expression, but we're seeing it many, many different times. And then check this out. So if we start with the bright pulse here, and we go, oh, how big is that? Well, that's actually to the bisection. So that's sort of like what we're talking about. But then when I go here to here, right there, that's one. That's one to there. I just sort of expand it out, and it keeps hitting these golden ratio points on this line, and it's nested in very beautiful ways. You can also imagine, right, if we take about this size in terms of area, right, it's sort of approximate, actually, right? It's sort of approximate. Something, you know, it's not perfect, but that's one of the weakest, like that sort of intensity measure is one of the weakest measures. It's not as regular as the frame rate. So this is Cosmic Highway by Jimmy Blanchett. So let's get back to here. Closing that out. We're going to talk about, I'll just start this playing in the background so you can see that while I change over the animation. Great. All right, so this, let's see, it's sort of showing up. This animation is the pulse of light. Yeah, you just saw the laser in the video, and it's sort of circling around this pulsation. This pulsation is the thing you see in the animation. It's cropped in. Rob Freeman has got a 10 times X zoom on it, and it's a very, very, yeah, I see it now right around there. So you can see that's what this thing expanded up in. And it's so sort of faint, we can only see it pulsing, so I can't really do the object detection that I have been so far. But that's okay, because I've got a couple different measures going on, and you can see the brightness measure of the pulse. And I'm doing some signal detection to make sure, based on these different measures that we've been talking about. You can see this signal actually being expressed in a bright pulse, a less bright pulse, a bright pulse, which you might recognize from the last one we looked at, actually, what we're calling the Cosmic Highway, right? So you see this sort of interval pulsation, right? And just note that between here and here is about 30 frames per second. So that means we're dealing with about less than 40 major pulsations per second. That signifies to me that we're not looking at an FAA compliant aircraft, let's say. Also, the fact that MUFON Canada analyzed this is definitely not a UAP. It crashed 2 cell towers, apparently, or synchronistically, those fell down in terms of the connectivity. And it's responding to conscious intention, and it's amazing. So this is what's coming out. And so I did the math on this. Let me show you some of the files. I have a long scroll of this, but this is when I figured it out. I did the counting, so you can see the counting I'm doing. You can see between the major pulses is 60 frames per second. So that's about 2 seconds. So that's really clear. We've got a really clear expression that we're probably not working with an aircraft. We've got the golden ratio ruler and compass constructions up here, as well as some of the raw math I did to say, yeah, this seems like it's golden ratio approximate. And so again, this is sort of coming out. You can start to see it. It's not perfect here. This graph actually doesn't come from the analysis I did. This is by hand. This is the clue. I was like, oh, okay, I'll count it all up. Here's the clue. It produced that graph that you saw, that you see right here. And I can actually show you what the whole thing looks like. I've got about 8,000 frames of the video. That's 1/10 of the whole video, actually. So you can start to see there's intensity is meaningful. This is a graph that is corrected by a binary star system that I analyzed as it moved across the frame. That's a known intensity. So I'm correcting for atmospheric variance. And so we can see really and truly proportions coming up in these pulsations at a regular interval experience that you calculate out is really probably not aircraft flight. So I wanted to then let me see. I wanted to just call out some of the software that I'm using. I'm releasing. I have visualization software and analysis software I've released as open source, so that you can work with this. It's a Creative Commons license. It's share alike, a non-commercial. So if you are doing research, feel free and just give credit where it's due, particularly with the videos. This video actually comes to us from the Monroe Institute. Comes to us from Rob Freeman, and the analysis from Dave Polachek of MoveOn Canada. So give credit where it's due, but you can really use this code. And I want to dive into this to offer some reflections about what's going on. But before I do, I wanted to say this whole inquiry really does come out of my work with dreams. So I did dream work, actually. I had a series of dreams about 2 months ago over the winter solstice that invited me to work with ruler and compass geometry and understand the anomalous geometry expressions in UAPs and crop circles and body marks. And so this inquiry, all of these numbers, this analysis is really and truly inspired by this dream work. And so you can learn more about that at dseti.org. I've got courses, I've got insight, ways you can do dream work sessions with me. This would be understood as the traditional style hypnosis. I'm certified as a hypnotist. I have another certification in Beyond Quantum Healing, but I really do offer this as dream work because I feel the ethics and epistemology of dream work really does apply to ET and NHI contact experiences. So I also cover some briefings about what's going on, why are we talking about UAPs, why are we talking about dreams, and how to connect with that. So that's a great place, and you can always connect with me. You can set up a consultation, and then we can just talk about education, training, collaboration, or sessions, or anything like that. So that concludes most of the presentation of this data. I wanted to then just sort of kick this off, this demonstration. This is the ePtolemy software demonstrating the geometric precision. So you can see the colors behind me. Those are all expressive of geometric ratios we're talking about. And I placed each of the pulsations, and you can see the UAP pulsating up here. You're familiar with it now because you know where the footage comes from. And you can really see that as time progresses, right, you can see it pulsing. Those white bars are the intensity of the pulse. The colored circles behind it, those all are like the circles I showed you. I'm drawing the circles that are used to construct the relationships. And each of these black dots on this timeline right here represent a pulse, a UAP pulse. And the circles, only those circles that intersect black dots are drawn. So those are only geometrically precise intervals, right? And there's 5 different of them I'm tracking. And most of the pulsations here are expressive of at least 4. At least 3 3 or 4. And that's saying this is much more signal than noise. Then you can see the same thing kind of mapped out linearly, kind of decomposed into different channels, basically. And you can see some overlapping experience and some staggering experience. And you can start to see, each of these pulses has a relationship to all the other pulses and is expressive of meaning. This demo, actually, I put some audio to it, and I'm going to just play that audio. And it should be coming in as beep. The tone is associated with the intensity of the pulse. And then we'll hear some background from Rob Freeman describing the experience.
It's basically sitting in one spot flashing, guys. Yep.
Wonderful. So this is truly a demonstration of the geometry. As you see, it's the whole pulse has been continuing this pulsation pattern, and you can see how precise it is. There's a gap there. I'm pointing to the two of the gaps, sort of, but even there, it's covered by multiple circles that have this sort of intersection pattern. It's just not as dense, primarily, I think, because of cloud cover, but maybe expressive of meaning as well. So there may actually be a kind of communication happening here. I just wanted to reflect now that we've covered all of the numbers, the analysis process you can get to through ePtolemy. I'm sharing my analysis. I've documented it in a variety of ways. I'll continue to document it, and I'll continue to look. I've looked at control examples of known planes. I've looked at a known debunked UAP video that's expressive of the same plane pattern. And by the way, those are the only 2 planes I analyzed. I'm presenting all of my analysis up to this point. I haven't been looking like this is I haven't been just going through all of these orbs and going I'm only collecting. This is sort of emerging up and out of an inquiry. I've been looking into this because I was trying to verify the body mark geometry coming through body marks, anomalous body marks. It's a whole nother topic. But I said, if we're seeing this geometry being marked on people's bodies in association with dreams, that seemed to be sort of non-harmful, but weird, right? If we're seeing that geometry, it has to come through other ways. And I found this geometry, and I go, oh my God, this is the same sort of expression. So that is sort of validating this sort of body mark inquiry. And then I said, I have to validate this inquiry, right? And so I looked at all the other orbs. And so we have some control examples like the incoherent police orb or something like that. And then we have this, right? And so this is really clearly a demonstration that the plane video should have demonstrated to you that that it is meaningful. It is these expressions of pulsation are clearly something like the airplanes, but something much more, and we need to look into that. So that's the sort of reflection I have. This is a significant finding to find geometry and some pulsations of UAPs that are clearly UAPs. It means it's clearly intelligent design, as we're seeing. We're identifying, oh, here's the pulsation pattern of planes. It's obvious. Here's the pulsation pattern of orbs that do this sort of thing and move around, and we know their characteristics and feeling. Because we can hear what the pilots are saying about it, or we can see what the experiencers are saying about it, and we understand that some of these orbs are coming from an invitation to communication. We can see that these orbs at least have reference to a common pattern of pulsation that we're expressing in the sky. So it seems to me as if we might be in a kind of communication with intelligent beings by way of this semi-technological expression of pulsation of lights in the sky. My personal feeling about this is that these are intelligences, these are expressive of intelligences, and that they are expressing in multiple different modes. So just like you see in the image behind me, there is like 5 orders of golden ratio nested in this kind of in the interval patterning, and that's being mirrored in the height expressions of the intensity pulsing. There's this efficiency and nestedness and fractality of this geometric communications that happening that's discernible just in the analysis I've done computationally. So now imagine that, actually the seeing the time and space, right, this sort of historic objective understanding that we have of time and space is maybe only one dimension of meaning being expressed. So just like we are seeing multiple different layers of meaning expressed in the physical dimension, we might see multiple layers of meaning being expressed in kind of a holistic or a polyphasic understanding of the world. And so we might actually understand that there is communication happening, right? People are having feelings and intuitions and dreams in association with this geometry. And I say that this geometry, especially like with the NARCAP 20 video or this Monroe Institute video or Jimmy Blanchett's or John Martin's CE5 work, is this isn't unexpected. This geometry is not unexpected. It is in line with the hypotheses of CE5. Hey, we can make human-initiated contact using our mind, right? That there is some level of consciousness connection. Yes, there is, because we're expressing invitation and they're responding in kind to the language that we're blasting out, right? So I'm saying this geometry is sort of helping us understand the vocabulary of communication, in demonstrating that we are actually engaged in something that looks like communication, using a universal language, the universal language of holistic geometry, right? That's really beautiful. And so I thank you for going on this journey with me and looking at these different experiences. We went from planes to possibly UAPs to incoherent orbs to coherent orbs to orbs that are clearly and distinctly unidentified aerial phenomena that are responding psionically to human invitation in ways that are kind, polite, and aware of beauty and respect, right, of human free will, and they are not causing harm. That's what I deduce when I look through these videos of highly coherent expressions of geometry. So thanks for being on this journey with me. I'd invite you to follow your intuition. Your intuition might be to study the numbers, right? And that's really great. To verify, that's wonderful. To go through a debunking process, to go, hey, I think that's actually a plane. Go right ahead. That's why I'm sharing the data, because I think there's actually a message here. But be aware that when you work with this geometry, it's an invitation to the intelligence that's inherent within this universe, that's expressing itself through the geometric nature of the universe, through the geometric nature of our perceptions of the universe. And so you're really coming into tune with those intelligences. You're opening the doors to those intelligences. It's like opening the doors to your dreams. You might have good dreams, you might have bad dreams, but those dreams really do invite you into a holistic experience of yourself, really, for your benefit and for the benefit of your community. That's the premise here. That's why I'm doing this work. That's why I'm offering all of the analysis and visualizations and things like that up for open source so you can reproduce it. You can have this experience. You can go, I went through and I debunked it, right? Maybe you can even find a plane in some of these, but maybe you won't, actually. Maybe you'll characterize this geometry in different ways. Likely you'll discover a different dimension of meaning, one that I would not even think of, right? And I think that's beautiful, and I think that's why they're expressing and why we can capture them in film and why the analysis processes are relatively simple, right? This isn't difficult work to do, although it requires you to do it. It requires you to put the time in to look at the data, to look at the analysis, and to go, that strange pulsing of pixels so far away that someone else recorded, that means something. And so you're doing actual work of building that cognitive frame to say this pulsation up here is beaming the presence of intentional, intelligent communication in our world that responds to human intention in ways that's respectful. That's what I'm saying those few pixels mean. And I'm saying that because I've done all this analysis and we've been looking at the geometric demonstration of intentional, beautiful geometry in what has been typically called a UAP. So with that, thank you for going on this journey. And I just pray that you connect in with this geometry and that it brings you really nice dreams and really good dreams and inspires you to take some action in this world and to make beauty and art in whatever way you're inspired to do.